Welcome to Global News on Signature Television. I am Charles Pius. In the headlines, WHO urges Nigeria to accelerate healthcare reforms. Governor Fubara approves 85,000 naira minimum wage for civil servants in Rivers. Governor's wife distributes federal government's palliatives to Abia PWDs, and Kenyan activists criticize deputy president's appointment, citing protest deaths. Details in a moment. I don't hear anything. I just see myself. That's right. I don't hear
Are you
anything.
hearing
But when I
me?
see myself now,
Are you hearing me?
I think they come up now. It's when I see myself now, I can they talk. Yes. Yeah. The World Health Organization, WHO, has called on the federal government to expedite healthcare reforms to meet Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) targets. WHO country representative to Nigeria, Dr. Walter Monombo, made this appeal in Abuja on Friday at the closing of a two-day training initiative for health journalists. The training, with the theme Empowering Journalists to Drive the Change in Narrative with Compelling Data-Driven Health Stories, aimed at equipping journalists with the skills to drive change through compelling storytelling. Mulumbo noted that only 17% of SDG healthcare targets were on track, emphasizing the need for swift action to achieve these goals. He stressed the importance of shifting from pilot projects to delivering large-scale quality healthcare solutions and fostering collaboration between the government and citizens. Mulumbo also highlighted Nigeria's ranking of 187th out of 191 countries in healthcare performance as unacceptable. Mulumbo urged journalists to collaborate with healthcare experts to ensure accurate information reached the public. As the media plays a pivotal role in promoting the SDGs, Mulumbo emphasized the importance of truthful and reliable information. The House of Representatives says it has created the website for public engagement on the bill for independent candidates in the country. Investigative hearing on alleged oil thefts, pipeline vandalism, and its environmental effects on oil-producing states continue. Senate passes vote of confidence on Senate President's details from the National Assembly. Netanyahu the other day announced that he has eliminated Sinwar, the Hamas leader, and he followed that with a statement saying that it is going to be a first step in many steps, to bring in peace to the Middle East. Even though Hamas leader is dead, it's still this war still continues, and largely because there are still some hostages that Hamas has. They have tried to track Sinwar all this while, and this is more than 1 year. They were not able to do that. But with intelligence, as claimed by Netanyahu and the US President Joe Biden, they have finally tracked him down and they have killed him. I think that the right thing to do right now is to reduce the bombing in Gaza and to focus on how to help the catastrophe in that region. There are people in their millions that have been displaced. At least one of the targets of this whole war, has been achieved, which is taking out the leader of Hamas, who is Sinwar. I thought that that statement would have been a little bit, just a little bit, um, empathetic, because after celebrating that you have killed Sinwar, who masterminded the killing of 1,000 people in Israel, I understand the pain that comes with that, because it brings back that memory of, what happened some times back, which is unfortunate and sad as it may be. But I thought that right now, Gaza people need some respite. They need to breathe. I thought that the statement should have been to talk about the catastrophe occasioned by the bombing by the IDF. I thought that the statement should have been to reinforce that peace would return to the region, especially now that the target has been eliminated, and reinforce that friendship or friendly, disposition that, Israel and Palestinians always have had for a growing peaceful environment. By saying that the war would continue is now saying that maybe other persons who have been communicating, who have been saying things like, maybe, Israel wanted to practically, they had it in their plan from day one to practically level Gaza, or maybe annex more places and take over that particular area. Maybe people start thinking that look, maybe there might be truth in that. And again, I think it's about time that this war ended, and negotiations are, back to negotiations on how the hostages will be released. I am more or less appealing that I can't imagine the catastrophe, the numbers of people who have been displaced, the number of people who have died, the number of people who have been traumatized, women, children, aid workers who are in that region. I can imagine the scale of madness. Isn't it possible to at least reduce the bombing, just reduce the fighting, and then focus on how you can rebuild that place? I don't know. Maybe I'm too emotional about these things, but that statement was tilted towards being insensitive. And for Hamas, I mean, you are a terrorist organization. I mean, it's been established. You should have some empathy even for the people of Palestine, because while Israel tries to, get to, the hostages in Gaza, they tend to take away people who are innocent. Look at women. I saw a video of a helpless baby, and I say to myself, what was the crime of this baby? Because it's caught in the wind of this whole chaos. What's the crime of this baby? What's the crime of this child? Crying profusely. Nobody to turn to, nobody to help. I just feel that it's about time that, peace returns to Palestine and peace returns to that area. So at least we can start looking at an existence that matter. We start looking at an existence that matter. I mean, that's all I can say, really. I mean, I think, again, Hamas must return those hostages. I mean, I understand. Sometimes I tend to, you see, sometimes as journalists, you are somewhat conscripted into thinking like an Israeli, And some of that time you're thinking of thinking like a Palestine. So there's this conflict of, you know, reaction that comes in the morning. You're thinking, oh, why didn't we have this negotiation? And in the afternoon, you're saying, oh well, how is this possible that this is happening within our conclave? I mean, we're talking the fact that it's a United Nations that are overseeing these countries, and we are not able to get to the negotiation table to get this ongoing. I'm pained by this, really, and I thought to really express my grief and my utmost anger and sadness, if not for anything, at least for the babies, those innocent babies who have been left, uncatered to, whose parents are traumatized, whose parents have been killed in the crossfire. It's about time peace returns, and those hostages must be released. And for Israel, please, I beg that you simmer down this killing since the leader of Hamas is gone. Meanwhile, the executive chairman, Courier and Logistics Management Institute, Professor Simon Emeje, said courier and logistics subsector could boost Nigeria's gross domestic product by 60% if fully tapped. Emeje said this at a news conference organized by the professional body to announce its upcoming CLMI International Conference and investiture on Friday in Lagos. The conference and investiture slated for November 14 will take place in Lagos. The CLMI boss said that tapping into the industry with assets worth over 15 trillion naira required regulatory excellence and innovation. Emeje, who expressed dissatisfaction that the full potential of the sector was yet to be tapped, urged the government to entrench regulations that would drive innovation, investments, and growth. According to him, an industry with such huge assets should have federal government's recognition. Speaking on the role of the CLMI, Emeje said that the institute was dedicated to supporting Nigeria's economic growth by bridging the gap between industry needs and government policies. He said that the institute had been recognized globally for its expertise with international partners seeking counsel. Emeje, however, said the courier and logistics industry in Nigeria took precedence. He noted that courier services played an important role in driving efficiency and meeting customers' demands. The 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, says Nigeria must be intentional with its agricultural investments if it must conquer food insecurity. Obi stated this in a statement issued by the spokesperson, Ibrahim Umar, on Friday in Abuja against the backdrop of a report on food security released by the World Bank. Excuse me. The former Anambra governor likens Nigeria's worsening food insecurity crisis to war-torn in countries like Yemen, stating that there was a significant rise in the number of people facing acute food shortages and hunger epidemic. Obi said he had maintained over the years that moving the country from consumption to production remains the surest way of combating food insecurity and pulling the nation out of present food crisis, and that the greatest assets of the nation remain the vast uncultivated lands in the north and the huge demographics. He expressed regrets that a state like Niger, which is twice bigger in landmass than the Netherlands, could neither feed itself nor the nation when the Netherlands exports over $100 billion worth of agro-products annually. This, he said, could be achieved by combating insecurity, which had kept farmers away from the farms, and adopting modern ways of mechanized farming. The Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, says it has deposited 30 billion naira in the Bank of Industry to grow small and medium enterprises in the 9 states in the region. The managing director of the NDDC, Chief Samuel Obuku, said this on Friday in Akure during the sensitization on the establishment of the Niger Delta Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Trade, Mines, and Agriculture. Obuku, represented by the Ondo State's representatives in the NDDC, Otito Atikase, said that the money was the Commission's counterpart funds for disbursements to entrepreneurs, nano, and other beneficiaries to grow their respective enterprises. He said that the initiative would give loans to beneficiaries who could not get loan from the conventional financial institutions. The NDDC boss also said that the gesture was born out of the sincere desire to find a lasting solution to the challenges plaguing businesses in the Niger Delta region. He said that the initiative would help to ensure that the development was brought to the people of the region through genuine processes of economically empowering them. Obuka further said that the Commission was committed to working closely with NDCCTIMA to design a pathway of prosperity for the people that would complement ongoing projects, HOPE and IFAD. Also speaking, the Executive Director of Projects in the NDDC, Mr. Victor Atai, said that the event was to raise awareness about the establishment of the NDCCITMA and also explore the vast opportunities it represented across various economic sectors. FBN Holdings PLC has appointed Adebowale Oyedeji as its Group Managing Director, GMD, effective November 13th. Adewale Arogundade, Company Secretary of the Holdings, confirmed this in a notification sent to Nigerian Exchange Limited on Friday in Lagos. Arogunade said that the appointment was subject to the approval of the Central Bank of Nigeria and ratification of the firm's shareholders at the annual general meeting of the company. He added that Oyedeji, a seasoned professional, would replace Nnamdi Okonkwo, who would retire after completing his term. Oyedeji holds a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Economics from the University of Ibadan and a Master of Science in Financial Economics from the University of London. He's also a Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, and an alumnus of Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program. The new GMD has over 30 years of experience in banking, spanning a corporate banking, treasury, commercial banking, and general management. Group Chairman Femi Otedola welcomed Oyedeji and expressed confidence that he would build on the 130-year-old franchise solid foundation and sustain its leadership position. The federal government says there is no going back on the removal of fuel subsidy in the country. The Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, restates that the government stand during the presentation of the Nigeria Development Updates by the World Bank in Abuja. Edun revealed that the subsidy on fuel and foreign exchange had drained the country's economy, costing over 10 trillion naira, which amounts to 5% of Nigeria's gross domestic product, GDP. The minister announced a new government plan aimed at addressing unemployment with a focus on housing finance, saying that the government expects the approach to boost construction activities and generate significant job creation. Earlier, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Kadoso, explained that the rationale behind the recent 0.5% interest rate hike, which stood at 26.75%. According to him, the policies and interventions to cushion the Naira crisis and inflation are based on empirical data and necessary steps. But Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed, while speaking at the event, condemned the policies but put forward by the federal government, which he emphasized were causing a lot of hardship for Nigerians. Meanwhile, the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Doris Uzoka Anita, says the inauguration of the Nigerian Exports Promotion Council, NEPC, Export Skills Acquisition Center, will build the capacity of youth and women. The minister made this known at the inauguration of the Export Skill Acquisition Center and Fashion Innovative Hub for Women and Youths on Friday in Lagos. The NEPC, in collaboration with Lelug Nigeria Limited, established the ESAC to facilitate skill development in innovative bag making and related accessories. She commended the NEPC for establishing the ESAC, describing it as a crucial step aligned with President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda aimed at economic growth, job creation, and poverty alleviation. She said that given the opportunities offered by the African Continental Free Trades Area, AFCFTA, there was no better time to kickstart the project than now. Uzoka Anita said that reports had disclosed that the African fashion industry was estimated to worth $31 billion, while the global fashion industry stood at $2.5 trillion. She acknowledged the challenges faced by African fashion designers compared to their Western counterparts, stating that the establishment of the center aims to tackle these fundamental issues, hindering export growth and economic diversification. The minister said that the Skill Acquisition Center would offer the specialized training programs covering a range of exports-related skills, including product development, quality control, and international trades regulations. Meanwhile, the River State's government has joined Lagos State government to approve a minimum wage of 85,000 naira for civil servants in the state. This was disclosed by the head of service of the state, Dr. George Nweke, who announced that the approval was granted by Governor Similai Fubara during a closed-door meeting with the labor leaders and senior government officials Friday, 18th October, at the government house. Nweke confirmed that the implementation of the new minimum wage will take effect immediately. On their part, the chairman of the joint negotiation team, Chukwu Emecheta, praised Governor Fubara for meeting the expectation of River State workers. He expressed appreciation for the governor's commitments to the workforce. Also speaking, the chairman of the Nigerian Labour Congress in River State, Alex Agwangwo, noted that the minimum wage will greatly alleviate the economic hardships faced by workers in the state. Israel must find a way to save the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, and the time is now. The number one target of this whole war was the leader of Hamas. Of course, I know there are a list of things. I had spoken to Israeli ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Freeman, on my show. For those who don't know, you could go on my platform and check those videos. I had told him, I had asked him, what would happen for Israel to call off this war? He says clearly, release the hostages and the war ends. The hostages are still with Hamas. I'm calling on Hamas to release the hostages. And I'm also asking Israel to stop. Still to come, Lagos state government flags off supplemental immunization activities to safeguard residents' health. Anambra community leaders kidnapped 2 weeks ago regains freedom. Details in a moment. So now that Sinwar is out of the place, there is no rank and file, and there are no leaders, even though I have just heard that Hamas has appointed another leader. Welcome back. The wife of Abia Governor Priscilla Oti on Friday distributed 500 bags of 25 kg rice and other food items to persons with disabilities in the state. In a speech during the exercise in Umuahia, Oti said that the initiative was meant to cushion the impacts of the current economic challenges faced by PWDs. The items were part of the federal government-sponsored palliative materials to the states and the federation to alleviate the impact of the economic hardship. Oti said that the prevailing economic hardship has denied many families the opportunity to enjoy standard living conditions. According to her, the federal government is working with relevant stakeholders in the food value chains to end the challenges of high cost of food. She commended the federal government for extending the gesture to Abia. Oti said that the state government was also determined to continue to prioritize the affairs of PWDs because the gains derived from disability inclusion contributes to the development of society. The Commissioner for Poverty Alleviation and Special on Social Protection, Blessing Felix, described the palliative materials as a symbol of government's recognition of the challenges facing PWDs in their daily life. Felix also thanks the federal government for its continued commitment to the cause of PWDs in the country. Meanwhile, the Enugu State Governor Peter Amba has approved the digitalization of all primary healthcare centers in the state. The Executive Secretary of the Enugu State Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Ifeanyiwa Aniosheku, disclosed this when she led a team from the World Health Organization, WHO, on a facility tour of the newly constructed Type 2 primary healthcare centers in the state. The Executive Secretary said the essence of the digitalization was to ensure quality service delivery and to obtain accurate data which she said was now much needed in the health sector. She said that the Mbale administration embarked on the construction of 260 Type 2 healthcare facilities across the 260 political wards to bring healthcare delivery closer to the rural people. The zonal coordinator of WHO in the southeast, Dr. Chukwumuya Ibweku, commended Mba for his bold reforms in the health sector, especially the building and equipping of 260 level 2 PHCs that met standard across 260 wards of Enugu. He reiterated the investments in PHCs, revitalization, and strengthening of a functional primary healthcare system was mostly a most sustainable pathway towards achieving health security and universal health coverage for Enugu people. The wife of Lagos State Governor Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu has urged parents to vaccinate their children against preventable childhood diseases to safeguard their health and future. Sanwo-Olu gave the charge at the flag-off ceremony of the Lagos State Supplemental Immunization Activities held at the Ifako Ijaya local government on Friday. The immunization, which will commence in all 57 local government development agencies of the state on October 19th, is in partnership with the United Nations Children's Funds, UNICEF. 85% of Lagos residents from 9 months to 44 years is projected to receive yellow fever vaccine booster doses. There will also be a measles vaccine for children from 9 months to 18 months. Others are HPV vaccines against cervical cancer for females aged 9 years from 14 years or to 14 years, and polio vaccine, among other routine immunization. Sanwo-Olu, represented by the wife of the Senior Special Advisor on Mineral Resources to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, appeals to parents and other adults to take advantage of the SIA to break the circle of preventable diseases. Sanwo-Olu said that the vaccination would significantly reduce mortality rates, which align with the state government's development plan for 2050. She praised UNICEF, World Health Organization, and others for working with the state government to curtail the outbreak of vaccine-preventable diseases. Meanwhile, the Commissioner of Police in Kogi, Bertrand Onoha, has advised politicians, their supporters, and voters to ensure peace during Saturday's local government council elections in the state. Onoha gave the advice in an interview with newsmen in Lokoja on Friday. The CP, who spoke through SP Williams Oviaya, the Command's Police Public Relations Officer, PPPRO, said that the police personnel had been deployed across the 21 local government areas to ensure hitch-free elections. The chairman of the State Independent Electoral Commission, Kosiek Maman Ndaire, has also assured travelers passing through Kogi of unrestricted movement. Ndaire said that the restriction order was for residents whom he advised to be at the polling units as early as 8 a.m. to exercise their franchise. He said that polls would close at 3 p.m. while all those on the queue would be allowed to vote. The Commission chairman also appeals to the electorate to ensure they conducted themselves in peaceful and orderly manner for the success of the exercise. Similarly, the Kaduna State government has announced restriction of movement ahead of the chairmanship and consularship elections slated in the state for Saturday, October 19th. The Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arowan, who made this known in Kaduna on Friday, said the restriction between 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. is to ensure peaceful and orderly conduct of the chairmanship and consularship elections into the 23 local government councils and 255 wards. Arowan said vehicular movement as well as commercial and other related activities which may constitute impediments to law and order are to cease within the period of the restriction, and that only persons performing essential duties are exempted from the restriction. He therefore advised citizens to refrain from actions that could disrupt public peace or affect smooth conduct of the elections, as security agencies have been deployed to ensure enforcement and compliance. Two operatives of the Department of State Services, DSS, have dragged the Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SARA, before the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory for allegedly making false allegations against them. They are equally seeking a public apology and demanding the sum of 5 billion naira as damages suffered as a result of the SARAP's alleged false publication. In a suit filed on October 17th by their team of lawyers led by Akinlolu Kehinde, a senior advocate of Nigeria, the operatives allege that SARAP had in a post on its X handle brought them that the DSS to ridicule them when it accused them of invading and interrogating some staff members at the Abuja office. According to Sarah John and Gabriel Ogunleye, first and second claimants, the DSS had on September 9, 2024, directed them to Sarab's office to invite the new leadership of the organization for a familiarization meeting, which they did, and that shortly after they left the office. Sarab posted on X, the DSS officers are unlawfully occupying the Sarab office in Abuja. The tweets and subsequent statements by Sarab, which went viral on social media, was widely circulated and broadcast in major media outlets in the country. They claimed attracted wide condemnation from the public, including a senior lawyer, Femi Falana, and further attracted condemnation on the two claimants who had visited Sarab's office on that September 9th. They further claimed that Sarab's statements caused him to their reputation because the staff and management of the DSS have formed the opinion that the claimants did not follow orders and carried out an unsanctioned operation. Meanwhile, troops of the 6th Brigade of the Nigerian Army have again apprehended 3 individuals suspected of collaborating with terrorist elements in Taraba State. A statement made available to journalists in Jalingo in the early hours of Friday by the acting spokesperson of the brigade, Captain Oni Olubudonde, said the operation was launched after reports of bandit activity in the Kona mountain range, which spans Jalingo and Lao local government areas. The troops moved swiftly, arresting 3 suspects identified as Ahijo Suleiman, Abdurrahman Isa, and Aisha Mohammed, wife of Ahijo Suleiman, who revealed that their residence was used to hide weapons after terrorist operations. They said the 3 suspects were at the time of this report in custody and reaffirmed the commitment of the Army to protecting lives, property, and preserving the nation's territorial integrity. Meanwhile, the President General of the Umunze Progressive Union, Ezekiel Iheazo, and the prominent chieftain of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Ikechukwu Okoli, who were abducted in the Umunze Anambra State 2 weeks ago, have regained freedom. The kidnap of the 2 men, the residents of the Abga chieftain in Lomu village in Umunze, was said to have sent shockwaves and fear to the community. However, jubilation erupted in the community when the news broke out that the release of the community leaders by their abductors. The source told newsmen that the men returned Thursday night after staying over 2 weeks in the den of the abductors before their release, but did not reveal whether the families of the abductors paid any ransom before they were released. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has mourned the late President General for Hanes and Debo Emmanuel Iwanya, describing him as a colossus of many parts. In a tribute he signed on Friday, Tinubu recalled Iwanyan's exploits in sports and business and his ingenuity and resourcefulness in politics and philanthropy. The late President General for Hanes and Debo, he noted, served the nation in many official capacities and was the founding chairman of the Raw Materials and Research Development Council and chairman of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, as well as the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, FEMA, Nigerian National Lottery, and chairman of the National Orthopedic Hospital, Ibobi, among several other positions. The late elder statesman, according to him, lived a life of service and served his people and the nation with his wealth, providing scholarships to indigent students, building schools and hospitals, and supporting many charitable causes. Tinubu commiserates with the Iwanyanwo family, the government, the people of Imo State, and the Indibo as a whole, as the burial rites of Chief Iwanyanwo begin in a few days. Chief Iwanyanwo died on July 25th, 2024, at age 81. The remains of Nze Felix Ugu Ozoalo have been laid to rest at his country home, Umwezani Amekengwo, in Udi local government area of Enugu State. Nze Felix Ugu Ozoalo, who died at the age of 102 years, was until his death the oldest man in Umwezani community, Amekengwo. Correspondent Chinemere Mikebunam witnessed the burial of the late patriarch and now reports. So, I was saying earlier that I spoke to Israeli ambassador to Nigeria about the growing concerns in Gaza, and the attention is always shifting to October 7th killing of Israelis, which is so bad. This is so bad. Nobody would see that range of attack on its soil and let it go. But I know there were a list of things that Israel must achieve before they stop the war. One of them is, eliminating the leadership of Hamas, and of course, any threats of terrorism in the region. And so, at least one of their major achievements has been achieved. You could tell. Nobody can fault the fact that their intelligence have given them the right to get precise targets and eliminates terror or eliminates people that they see as threats to the region. But the concern must now start shifting. It must start shifting to how we can help the situation in Gaza. Millions of people have been displaced. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. The leader of Hamas have been killed. I hear that another leader has been appointed, but I'm still shocked at the way Hamas is headed. But again, I want to state clearly that the attention must be shifted from just talking about the war and the amount of persons that have been killed. They must start talking about how to rehabilitate, how to rebuild that area. It's bad enough that we're seeing numbers of people being killed. It's bad enough that we're seeing children, women, vulnerable people die every single day in that area. It's bad enough. I think they shouldn't make the matter worse than it's already. The U.S. has given Israel an ultimatum in 30 days, even though there are people who have faulted that particular statement by Joe Biden, stating that 30 days is too long a time given to Israel to make sense of what's going on in that area. 30 days is just too long. You don't do that. Like 30 days for what? And then there are people who think that it's a political statement because elections in America, is November 5th. Just a minute. Still to come, Russia wants lasting peace in Ukraine, Putin says. Italy's Prime Minister Meloni in Beirut calls for strengthening of UNIFIL. These and more after the break. I beg my throat is dry. Not too hot. Welcome back. You're watching Global News with Charles. Kenyan activists criticized President William Ruto's nomination of Kithure Kindiki as deputy president on Friday, citing his role as interior minister during deadly protests earlier this year. Ruto named Kindiki to replace Rigathi Gachagua, who was impeached by the state or Senate on Thursday. However, a court order has temporarily blocked Kindiki's appointment until October 24th, when judges will hear a case challenging Gachagua's removal. Human rights activists in Nairobi expressed dismay over Kindiki's nomination, linking him to the deaths of over 60 people during the demonstrations against tax hikes and the cost of living in July and August. They planted trees to honor these or those killed and called for accountability. Some people thought that that was a political statement, telling Israel, giving Israel 30 days to do something quickly about the catastrophe in Gaza is a political statement because there are growing concerns in American public about how America has supported and allowed what has happened in Gaza play out. And so there's a possibility that people might decide to vote in another direction because of what's going on. Because again, this catastrophe didn't start yesterday. I mean, these numbers have been coming in. They have more intelligence than anybody else. Just a minute. Some residents of Nairobi's Mathare neighborhoods also rejected Kindiki's appointment, connecting him to controversial housing demolitions along riverbanks, which they said caused significant distress in affected communities. Kenyan analysts suggested that the protests and their violence aftermath likely contributed to Gachagoa's impeachment and Kindiki's subsequent nomination. Gachagoa, who helped Ruto secure votes in central Kenya during the 2022 election, had recently spoken of being sidelined amidst reports of a rift with the president. U.S. President Joe Biden concluded his brief visit to Berlin, boarding the presidential plane Air Force One as scheduled late on Friday afternoon. During his trip to the German capital, he held closed-door talks with allied German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to discuss matters ranging from Ukraine to the expanding conflict in the Middle East. Before the bilateral meeting, Biden spoke to reporters and urged the West to sustain its support for Ukraine against Russia's full-scale invasion as Kyiv faces a bleak winter and a looming U.S. presidential election raises worries about the strength of Washington's own resolve. Biden's trip came just 2.5 weeks before the U.S. presidential vote, where former President Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, is seeking re-election in a dead heat race against Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic candidate. Trump has signaled he would be more reluctant than Biden to continue to support Ukraine, which could deprive Kyiv of its biggest military and financial backer. He has also indicated that U.S. aid to allies in the NATO Western Military Alliance would come with conditions attached. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron joined Biden and Scholz on Friday afternoon for talks focused largely on how to end the fighting in Ukraine as Russian forces advance in the east. Earlier on Friday, Biden met Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who awarded him Germany's highest order of merit, the Grand Cross of the Order of the Merit given for special achievements. That Biden was paying what could be his last visit to Europe as president to Berlin is seen by many as testaments to the close working relationship he has with Scholz. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Friday reiterated calls for ceasefire in Gaza and the release of Israeli hostages, as well as reinforcing Western support for Ukraine in its war against Russia.
Long-term peace and security. The dire humanitarian situation cannot continue. And I say once again to Israel, the world will not tolerate any more excuses on humanitarian assistance. Civilians in northern Gaza need food now. The UK strongly supports UNRWA in the vital work it does in Gaza, across the OPTs and the region. UNRWA must be allowed to continue its life-saving support.
Starmer's comments came after he met French President Macron, US President Joe Biden, and German Chancellor Scholz on Friday afternoon for talks in the German capital focused largely on the Middle East and Russian aggression in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that he had asked the defense ministry to work on proposals for possible weapons exports. A possible to think of an export ban imposed during the war against Russia would be a dramatic change in government policies as Ukraine defends itself against a much larger and better equipped enemy. Zelensky told Ukrainian TV that the exports would be possible only to Ukraine's allies in the Ramstein group, which coordinates military support for Kyiv. Ukraine has transformed its weapon production industry since Russia's invasion in February 2022, quickly ramping up production of drones in particular and all other weapons. Officials have said that Ukraine tripled its overall domestic weapons production in 2023 and then doubles that volume again in just the first 8 months of this year. Zelensky said on Friday he expected the White House team to visit Ukraine soon with feedback on the victory plan presented to Western leaders earlier. He said in an interview with Ukrainian media that he agreed with US President Joe Biden that Ukraine would be receiving assistance packages quickly, likely every 2-3 weeks in upcoming months. Zelensky said that Ukraine's allies were pushing for the country to lower its military draft age, but that he saw no reason to do so. Under current laws, only men aged between 25 and 60 can be mobilized into Ukraine's military, which is fighting off a full-scale Russian invasion. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Friday that Moscow needs to secure conditions for a lasting peace in Ukraine, which he said would help ensure Moscow's long-term security interests. The Kremlin leader was speaking to reporters ahead of a summit of the BRICS countries next week, hosted by Russia in the city of Kazan. Putin is keen to build up BRICS, which has expanded to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa as a powerful counterweight to the West in global politics and trade. Thousands of protesters, mainly Houthi supporters, rallied in Yemen's capital Sana'a on Friday to commemorate the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, who was killed during an operation by Israeli soldiers in the Gaza Strip on Wednesday. The rally saw demonstrators chanting slogans and holding posters of Sinwar, while large billboard screens displayed his image. Protesters, including children, were seen holding rifles, while others waved Palestinian and Lebanese flags. United Nations Humanitarian Office accused Israel on Friday of using warlike tactics against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, citing killings by soldiers and attacks on Palestinian olive groves by Israeli settlers. The OCHA report said around 600 million olive trees have been burnt, vandalized, or stolen by settlers since the start of the harvest. It included a picture of a Palestinian man standing next to an olive tree stump with its branches sawn off. An eyewitness video also shared by OCHA on social media showed several cut and damaged olive trees lying in a field said to be in Qasra, West Bank. Israeli military said that, as with every year, it was working to secure the area to let people get on with the harvest. The harvest season was planned and coordinated with all relevant parties, and IDF forces are providing security in the designated areas, it added. Rockets fired towards Israel were visible from Lebanon's small town of Majaon on Friday. Lebanese group Hezbollah early on Friday announced the transition to a new and escalating phase in the confrontation with Israel. Earlier in the day, Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati and Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni agreed that a diplomatic solution must be precedence over violence. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni met with Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabil Berri in Beirut on Friday. The meeting took place after Meloni held a news conference with Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati, where they agreed that a diplomatic solution must take precedence over violence. Meloni called for the strengthening of the UN peacekeeping mission in Lebanon, known as UNIFIL, during the news conference. The UN peacekeeping mission in Lebanon said on Friday it had come under several deliberate attacks by several forces in recent days, and efforts to help civilians in the villages in the war zone were being hampered by Israeli shelling. The UN mission, known as UNIFIL, is stationed in southern Lebanon to monitor hostilities along the demarcation line with Israel, an area that has seen fierce clashes this month between Israeli troops and Iran-backed Hezbollah fighters. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called on Friday for the strengthening of the UN peacekeeping mission into Lebanon, known as UNIFIL, during a visit in Beirut. Only by strengthening UNIFIL while maintaining its impartiality, we will be able to turn the page, Meloni said during a joint news conference with Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Michel Barnier and Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Antonio Tajani pledged on Friday to bolster the two countries' cooperation against illegal immigration. France and Italy will, among other steps, create a joint police team to investigate migrant trafficking, Barnier told reporters in Menton at the border with Italy. There have been tensions and much criticism between France and Italy, both European Union members, over the past years over the politically sensitive issue of immigration. But at a time when the two are among countries pushing the European Union to toughen its stance on immigration, and with a new government in place in France, they pledged to turn the page. Speaking to reporters on the Italian side of the border, Tajani said the two countries had identical views on immigration, including the need to work together and exchange best practices. France's new minority government of Conservative Prime Minister Barnier, which depends on the far-right National Rally to survive, has cited the fight against illegal immigration as one of its top priorities, and Barnier is keen to work with the European leaders on this issue, or whatever their political colors, French government officials say. Meanwhile, a Rome court on Friday rejected orders to detain a group of migrants in a reception facility in Albania and said they had a right to be brought to Italy, dealing a blow to Meloni's plan to divert asylum seekers abroad. Barnier did not comment on the court's decision, but said Italy's deal with Albania was likely not something that could be implemented in France, where the context was different. And that's the news hour. I'm Charles Pies. Thanks for watching. In another 5 minutes, the new day begins with Chi and company. Stay with us. So the news is all over. I want to say I appreciate you, but this is just about speaking directly to Israel. The catastrophe must stop. Now that one of your major reasons why you started the war in the first place has been achieved, so that catastrophe, you must start addressing that. There are no more excuses. Just like British Prime Minister stated, the world will not listen to any more excuses about how you send aid into Gaza and it's been siphoned or taken by Hamas. I mean, nobody's going to listen to that anymore. So please, as quickly as possible, some things must change going forward. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. See you on the next one.